Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And today we're going to talk about being messy, but not being messy as in unhygienic. Being messy as in being aligned with the nature of life. Life is messy. I don't know if you've noticed that, right? Things do not always follow neatly ordered lines. The best laid plans of mice and men do often go astray because life is an organic unfolding. It is non-linear. And yet we try to impose a sort of a left brain linear order onto life. And that can be helpful up to a point. But when you try to impose that kind of linear order onto an inherently chaotic, non-ordered system, you just get conflict and heightening of chaos unless you're in full control of the system. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we're not in control of the universe. I don't know if you know that, but we aren't in control of the system. We're not even in control of our own minds. Now, I think that's because we're not designed to be. And I use as my evidence the fact that nobody is. So I've been in the sort of self-help business development world for almost 30 years. And I've met some of the founders of the self-help, positive thinking, mind control movement. And none of them were in control of their minds. Now, that doesn't mean they were liars. It means they were ambitious. They were trying to go in that direction, and they felt that their inability to completely control their minds or to completely control life were failings on their part. Whereas to me, that doesn't look like a failing. That looks like an indication of how life actually works. So I went through the same thing for myself. I had what I called 95% discipline. So, or sometimes I called it fuzzy discipline. So I went to a coach who, in my mind, was an example of somebody who was not messy, who had successfully imposed order on every aspect of his life. And I said, I wanted to go from fuzzy discipline to straight edge discipline. And what I learned in my time with him was, first off, he wasn't that much less fuzzy than I was, though he was less fuzzy. But also that life doesn't lend itself to straight line thinking because life is messy. And the metaphor I have for it is, in the Victorian times, there were sort of two kinds of garden. I don't know if this is still the same way, but there was what they would call the French garden and the English garden. And the French garden was linear. It was very much the garden you would expect from an autocratic, everything must be exactly this, and you could measure it with a ruler how far away each rose must be from each other rose. And there was an incredible discipline. And within the garden of the king, you could impose that order. Now, you had to be on it 24/7. While you slept, nature would have a way of something growing where it wasn't supposed to grow, or the rose beginning to lean too far to the left or the right. So it was a constant job just to maintain order in an intrinsically chaotic system. An English garden went the other way. And the thinking was, well, our job is to work with nature, but kind of highlight the beauty within it. And so an English garden maintains, sometimes even increases, the chaos of nature. But it puts just enough order in it so that you really notice a particular rose in a particular place. You notice the way a particular plant is growing in contrast to what's around it. And it's a way of being in harmony with the messiness of nature. So it's kind of that thing that I sometimes talk about how we're not in control, but we're not in control. In other words, it's not up to us, but it's not up to us. We aren't in charge, but we're really, really involved. And if we go out of the metaphor of a garden and into the metaphor of how you live your life, I find that people tend to fit into one of three categories. So on the one hand, you get the people who are trying to always impose absolute order. They've got the time management system that they follow to the letter. They've got the productivity systems and planners that they follow to the letter. They're usually, in fact, the people who write books on time management and productivity, that those of us who don't work that way struggle to try and make ourselves fit. And within their dominion, within their work life, they can often structure things in a way where they can impose that sort of French garden order onto life. But then they struggle in other areas of their life. Now, at another extreme, you have people who have given up and their lives are just chaotic. They're messy. They call themselves, I'm just creative, right? Well, you may or may not be creative, but that's nothing to do with why your life is a mess. And sort of those two extremes are the ones that dominate. They seem like the only two choices. I want to propose that there is a third choice. And that third choice is to let life speak. Let life come through you. To show up moment by moment, day by day, and respond to what shows up. And then you become a part of the implicate order that exists underneath the chaos. What do I mean by the implicate order? Well, it's a phrase that comes from the physicist David Bohm. And he talked about wholeness and the implicate order, that if you take any slice of life and look at it, it looks chaotic. But if you look at the whole of life, the ecosystem of life, there is an implicate order underneath it. There is a perfect balance within the universe. It doesn't look like it when we look at any aspect of it. But if you look at the whole to the extent that we can look at the whole, the implicate order begins to reveal itself. And we are of that implicate order. And when we let life live us, when we let life speak, when we show up and respond to life in the moment from the innate intelligence within us, then our lives become examples and exemplars of that implicate order. And like an English garden, we can do little things to enhance the beauty of it. But we never think that our idea of what it should look like is more important than what it actually is. So your homework for today, if you want homework, is to just let yourself be messy if you're normally incredibly on it, but not so messy that your life falls apart. And if you're normally like, I don't know, I'm just going to show it. If you're normally like chaos, then see what happens if you allow a natural order to begin to emerge. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk to you soon.